Okay. Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. I'm seeing a couple of people just joining the call. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We'll just wait for the live to just get a few more people before we get started. I know our guest did give me a heads up that she's running slightly a bit late, so hoping that she can only join maybe about a few minutes after 6, so that we can just kick off our conversation this evening. Okay. And if you're just joining the live, I just want to maybe share the title of the live once again for anybody that may have not seen the promotion. So we're talking about how to authentically self-promote on social media. And we're speaking to an absolute expert when it comes to this. We're speaking to Janine. She is a brand marketing consultant. She's worked in the media space for a number of years, and most notably and recently, she's the author of a book called When the Filter Fades. So we're talking to her about how she's just been navigating the world of self-promotion of her work as an author, but also just being in the media space and having to just observe how different personalities and brands have been just navigating this world of self-promotion. So I'm hoping that she can join us in a few minutes, but in the meantime, we'll just wait for a few more people to join us. And if you can, do give us a shout out in the comments. Do let us know where you are dialing in from. It's always great to just know who is joining us and where from exactly. You can just give us a shout out. We've got Khoitsi, and Khoitsi is so loyal. Welcome, welcome. She is dialing in from Botswana. She's been so loyal. I think in the 3 lives that I have been on, Khoitsi has been on 2 of those. So welcome. And I see that our guest is on. Janine is right here. Let me actually just accept Graham as well, I think from a previous live, and she is all the way from South Africa. We're about in South Africa. Do let us know so that we know exactly where you're coming in from. Janine, hello.
Oh, can you
There we
hear me?
go. Yes, we can hear you now. How are you?
Hello.
Okay, have you had a second to just, take a breath before we get started?
Listen, I ran in here, my car keys in hand.
Okay. We can give you a few minutes just to catch your breath while I just catch up with the audience a bit.
Sure thing.
Okay,
Let me go get
sure.
off camera and then I'll come back.
No problem. Okay. All right. So first and foremost, I'd like to say a big thank you to everybody that joined the online masterclass with Puti Mahanyele Tabengwa and Nozi last week. So that actually happened on LinkedIn. I know there was slightly a bit of a change in the format because we usually have Mentorship Mondays on IG, but this time it actually took on a different platform. And so do stay tuned for potential announcements in terms of, how else Mentorship Mondays might evolve from an engagement and a platform perspective. But if you missed that mentorship session, which was very, very powerful, I managed to catch up on it on YouTube, actually. You can also do the same if you've missed it. And yeah, just tune in and hear all the pearls of wisdom, insight, experience, and expertise from Puti Mahanyele. And I mean, we know her as a renowned businesswoman and currently the Chief Executive Officer of Naspers South Africa. So yes, do tune in and do catch up on that. I'm hoping that Janine is ready and we can get our Mentorship Mondays for this evening started. There we go. Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you. This is
Thank
so
you so
exciting.
Yeah, this is exciting. I mean, I was even more excited when I saw some of the questions that came up
Ooh,
after we went with the promotion on social media. So people want to really chat and just dive into what exactly self-promotion is and how they can potentially get better at it. And when I was thinking about potential guests actually for this IG Live, you came into mind. Number one, because of your book promotion drive. I mean, when the filter phase is, I would say, viral. And because every second post on your page is resharing, people who are reading it
yeah,
from all
yeah,
over the world. Ever since it's released, you've just been on a consistent promotional drive on
yeah,
different platforms, and I think a lot of it has taken a lot of self promotion to be able to do that. And I remember in one of your posts you mentioned that you've been leveraging your personal relationships to be able to engage in some spaces that you've been engaging in when it comes to your book promotion. But secondary to that, I think you have built a notable personal brand.
mhm,
And one of the questions, I mean, we'll get into is if this was, always strategic or just based on your interests and just your life stage at a specific
yeah,
time. But you've been able to try and traverse into different spaces actually. Started off as a journalist, went into an editor role for
yeah,
17 magazine, went into the com space, digital and social media. Ultimately, you've been consulting over the last few years, and most recently a novelist with your book. So I want to talk about that journey and how you've been able to cultivate your personal brand, moving from one space into another.
yeah.
And we can dive into self promotion and how that has helped elevate this brand.
Okay, so firstly, thank you so much for inviting me.
Sure.
Um, I don't see myself as a natural salesperson or a natural self promoter. So it's quite, I feel honored that you thought of me for this specific talk. I went through your questions and listen, I thought I was the journalist here. Like your questions were so deep that I even
Yeah.
and the questions that the audience had sent as well. I took a
Yeah.
look at those quickly and I was like, wait, hey, what's going on? So
Yeah.
I've jotted down quite a few talking points
Sure.
just to ensure that I'm, kind of delivering on a message that makes sense to everyone.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yes, my book promotion drive has been very deliberate.
Hmm.
It's been a big push, and it's also been a bit of it's been a bit conflicting for me. So I'll
Hmm.
discuss that within the parameters of what self-promotion is online. And I know you spoke about kind of my career journey and how strategic I've been or how I haven't been strategic or, how I've gone about thinking about personal branding. And it just so happens that in my field of work, there's a lot of natural, quote unquote, self promotion that kind of
Sure.
happens within that, being
Sure.
in the media space. I'm not a natural self promoter. I'm quite an introvert, actually, even though, I need to push myself to be more extroverted and to
Mm.
meet with different people, etc., etc. So sometimes it takes a lot of the personal energy and the push on the pull to get me to that point. When we talk about the concept of self-promotion itself, there can be a lot of discomfort around it, and again,
Mm.
I'm one of those people who feels that sense of discomfort around it, and the discomfort can be cultural, it can be generational, it can be, gendered. There are all these different layers to how one feels about promoting oneself, like
Mm.
I'm from a time where social media wasn't ubiquitous,
Mhm.
the internet was in its infancy when I went to university. Social media started when I was in the working world.
Mm.
So the concept of this democratization of self-promotion, it's
Sure.
a very new concept. Like 20 years ago, people weren't promoting themselves in the same way that it's happening now, right?
Mm.
So there's a generational part of this as well, whereas younger people are much more comfortable with promoting themselves because they're growing up in a time where social media is ubiquitous and they can understand and see themselves as a personal brand. They
Sure.
understand
Sure.
what this is, you know?
Sure.
Whereas I think for older people, we might not necessarily have the same idea.
Mm.
And then there are cultural issues, you know, we are raised, for better or for worse, in South Africa as Africans to be humble,
Yeah.
to not tout your achievements too
Yeah.
loudly,
Yeah. Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
you know, not talk too much about what you're
Mm-hmm.
up to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
abantu bazotini syndrome. We're
Yes.
raised with that. And
Yeah.
that also forms part of how comfortable or not comfortable you are with promoting yourself. Because we're raised with these ideas, and I think especially as women and younger women, to be humble, to not papa too
Mm.
much, to,
Mm.
you know,
Mm.
almost have your work speak for itself.
Yes.
And this idea
Yes.
of you going out into the world and saying, look at what I do. What I do is fantastic. It's actually such a culturally alien thing. And I think
Sure.
we
Sure.
need to keep that in mind as well, like what
Mm.
the different
Mm.
layers are to the resistance to self-promotion.
Yeah.
When I think of, yeah,
Yeah.
when I think about how I promote myself, I don't necessarily think it's strategic, but
Okay.
I do keep certain principles in mind
Okay.
because I
Okay.
do this for a living as well. Like
Yes.
I
Yes.
work with clients, I've worked in the
Mm-hmm.
corporate space, so I've done it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in a more kind of intentional way for
Mm-hmm.
clients. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to myself, there are principles I keep in mind, but I'm not necessarily coming at this with the same strategic plan as I would when I'm working with my
The
clients.
client.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I don't know if we can talk a bit about what those personal principles are that I think can help us, even those of us who are, you know, a bit uncomfortable
Yes.
with the idea of
Yes.
self-promotion.
Yes.
We can talk about some of those personal principles that
Yeah.
I think can really help people to tap into how they speak publicly and what they speak about. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So, I mean, you touched on, I guess, the taboo side or the negative perception on self-promotion. And now, you know, you're speaking to principles that can potentially help people who want to overcome any self-limiting beliefs
Yeah.
or the infamous imposter syndrome that is associated with, you know, self-promotion. So, let's go into that. Let's talk about what those principles
Yeah.
are. And I can't imagine also just having that conversation without alluding to a level of self-awareness and understanding of your personal values and belief system to be able to iron out those principles and let that inform how you position and promote yourself.
It's almost like you're reading my notes because like the number one thing that I advise everyone on when it comes to self-promotion or personal branding is you need to really understand your personal values. Like you need to understand who you are before you even take the product to market. You need to know what the product is. And I think so much can go wrong and it can be so much incongruence when your public persona and who you are as a person are at
Sure,
odds,
sure,
you know? So
sure.
the personal values part, like I think sometimes people really underestimate this, like the deep dive you need to do on who you are and what you stand for and what you speak for, because sometimes people get caught up in things that are trending or things that,
Yes.
you know, this is currently in on social media. I should have an opinion on X, Y, and Z, and they forget, is this who I am? Does this resonate with my personal values? Because your brand values are your personal values.
Yes,
You know?
yes.
So you have to be very
100%.
cognizant with what do I stand for? What is important to me? Because without that kind of compass point, you can't draw the through line between who you
Sure.
are online and who you are in real life.
Offline.
And
Yes, yes,
you
yes.
need those things to speak to one another very closely. So the personal values aspect of personal branding and self-promotion is so key. It is the bedrock, the foundation of the entire endeavor, because you can't speak to certain things online. And we've seen people get caught out. This is how people get dragged on social media every day for this, you know,
Yes,
because they're not
yes,
walking the talk. They talking the talk, but they're not walking the talk. So they can get tripped up when their values aren't in alignment to what they're selling to the public.
yes, yes, definitely. And that brings me to a very important question, actually, from the audience. Just underscore Amanda asked, how do you balance your authenticity with the pressure to conform to social media trends and expectations? And for me, I can't help but think about one of the characters in your book. Either Lynn or Lebu, maybe more Lynn, because she was the social media influencer, and how, you know, she had to navigate the world of influencing and celebrity, and trying to balance those
Mm.
expectations and maintaining a sense of authenticity in the process. So how does one strike a happy medium?
Okay, so I love that you've asked about authenticity, because I think this
Mm-hmm.
has become such a buzzword, and people
Yes.
almost use it as a shorthand when they mean being too good to be true, or being a
Mm-hmm.
social activist, or doing almost like CSI work on your profile, or you know, being very sanitized on your profile. People seem to kind of use that as shorthand when they think about authenticity.
Yes.
But to me, authenticity is about being genuine, showing up as your most genuine self, you know? That doesn't always mean you are necessarily your best self.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that you're your most real self. And I think
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the part about authenticity that is very interesting on social media, you have this curated authenticity that we've become so used to. But if you notice, some of the more successful influencers of late, authenticity is a key part to what they do.
Sure,
But
sure.
initially, when they come out, they almost face a backlash
Mm,
from the public about the authenticity, because to people who are inauthentic, authenticity is a threat.
sure,
People aren't
sure.
comfortable with that. People don't like that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Sabelo, the creator, he does these vlogs
Yes,
on, you
yes.
know,
Every
he's known for
Sunday.
the Sunday vlog. And
Yes.
I remember when he started just doing his vlogs of cleaning his place on a Sunday. Do you remember how much
I
backlash he
know
used to get?
he did get a lot of backlash. He really did.
He got so much backlash.
Mm,
And if he had quit at that point,
mm,
he would not have grown as a content creator and created a business and, you know, signed all these amazing deals that we see him doing now, if he quit
mm.
at that point where he was getting criticized. But he
Yeah,
was showing up incredibly authentically.
yeah,
He was not
yeah.
trying to pretend that he was cleaning a mansion, or he was sipping cocktails at the
Mm,
pool, or whatever
mm,
the case may be. He was being himself, and
mm.
it was genuine, you know. And I think that's what his audience, he found his audience eventually, and that's what his audience fell in love with.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also see it in constant conversation at the moment around Tyler. Some people even say that, you know, she's exaggerating her accent, which I find the funniest thing. But,
Yeah.
you know, showing up as your authentic self, you are initially going to get pushback, and you're initially going to go through some discomfort
Mm,
before you find your audience. Your audience finds you, and you
sure,
find that
sure,
happy balance.
sure,
Like, I mean,
sure.
I'm sure even for you, it's tricky.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
tricky, you
Very
know?
much so. Very much so.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so, so authenticity isn't just about that buzzword. It's about, who am I
Mm,
genuinely? What am I willing to show?
mm,
So, so for me personally, I made this decision a couple of years ago. When I'm on social media, any pictures I post, I don't filter my pictures at all.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
If I look good on that day, I look good on that day. If I don't look good on that day, you're just gonna have to take it, because one day I realized. Okay, I'm sorry. Are we good with
No,
the
no, no. We're
sound?
still good. We still good.
Okay. I didn't want someone to meet me in real life and say, but you don't look like your pictures.
Yes, yes, yes.
Like, I don't want that. I don't want to be humbled in that way, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so people are going to have to take me as I am. And
Mm,
leaning into that type of authenticity, it can, as I
mm,
said, come with backlash. But if you want to, create content, if you feel like there's something that you have to say that people need to hear, you have to fight through that. You have to fight through the discomfort. You have to
mhm.
fight through the backlash, and you
Yes,
have to be prepared for it.
100%. And I mean, you touched on something that was interesting around a curated authenticity, and I'm curious to find out what the difference between genuine authenticity and a curated version can be, because I think in also just knowing what that difference is, it steers people away from performing authenticity, which is actually not sustainable, because that's where you start seeing the incongruence, the
Yep.
inconsistency in different areas and in aspects of their life. So what is then that curated aspects of authenticity? But also just keeping in mind in the fact that, when we get on these platforms, especially if the goal is to grow an audience
Mm,
or to make money out of social media, there is a level of strategy
mm,
that needs to come in. So, how do you balance then that curation
mm.
and that realness?
Yeah. I think, we all have lines that we have to draw for ourselves. So I don't like to even be too prescriptive on this,
Okay.
because sometimes when people sell lifestyle, it depends on what that means to them, right? But
Hmm.
I just want to give a few kind of examples or things to think about. Um, there's a very clear difference between creating an authentic kind of persona for yourself online, where you are, let's say you're doing cooking videos,
Hmm.
uh, to have that curated authenticity versus, are you showing the real you? Are you showing not the real you? You also need to understand what your audience wants to get from what you're giving. But for example, there's a difference between um, putting, begging, borrowing, and stealing to have top of the line cookware, le creuset.
Yes,
That's not a
yes.
lifestyle you
Yeah,
live.
yeah,
And
yeah.
going to cook at your friend's house because they have a smeg stove versus your house where you have a defy stove.
Yeah, yeah.
and is you still cooking the same stew,
Hmm.
but what is the message about yourself that
That's
you're
it.
conveying to the
That you want
audience?
to
Like,
portray.
what,
Yeah.
yeah, what is
Sure.
authentic and what is genuine when you're putting it out there? Are you really
Sure.
the girl with the Le Cru pots on the Smeg stove? Or are you the girl with the AMC Classic on the Defy stove? And
Hmm.
then why are you making those certain decisions that aren't necessarily authentic to you? What's
Sure.
driving those decisions that you're
Sure.
making? I think we need to be a bit more self-critical and self-aware and ask ourselves that
Mm,
type of questions as well.
mm, definitely, definitely. So then when we talk about credibility, which is something that you were hinting at,
Mm,
in the previous answer, credibility and self-promotion. I think a lot of people might also feel whatever imposter syndrome or a sense of inadequacy around self-promotion if they feel like they don't have the credentials. So if they don't have
mm,
the accolade, they don't have the achievements, they don't have the MBA, for example. They might feel like, who am I to share my perspective on branding, on marketing, on entrepreneurship? What would your advice be for someone like that? And also, what role do these credentials and achievements play?
Whew, I can talk about, I just came back from a meeting with someone who I respect. They
Mm,
are someone who I look up to
yeah,
so much, and we were having this
yeah,
conversation about
yeah,
credentials. And
yes.
I said we both have head girl
Mm,
mentality, where we need the
mm,
certificate at all times. Like,
yes.
I always need the certificate. I can't just
To
go and do
prove
something. I need the
it.
certificate. Um,
Yeah,
but when we talk about these credentials, like those things are only like a blue stamp, like a verification mark to show that you've done that, right? But I think
sure.
there's also experience, and there are also your unique experiences that you can leverage to create that narrative and to tell those stories, because your personal experience is literally your personal experience. It's unique. No one else has that point of view. But if you're willing to lean into that specific part of yourself, don't give us
Yes.
the rote 10 things to know about marketing. Anyone can do that. What is your point of view that's different to everyone else? So when I was thinking, I was going through the questions, as I said, and I was thinking about the experience question versus credentials question. So I was
Yes.
thinking about, someone who's been a receptionist for 5 years has faced people for 10,000 hours.
Sure.
That person doesn't have an MBA necessarily in most cases, right? But this is someone who has had to face people face to face, on the phone, deal with difficult principals and clients and all kinds of things. That person has something to teach. I can learn something from
100%.
someone like that who has had 10,000 hours of people time. So I think in an environment where you feel like, I don't have the credentials, I don't have that backing, what are your unique points of view, and what are the unique experiences that you can leverage to create content or to speak to an audience that,
Sure.
because I can't be credentialed in being you. Sure, I can have an MBA, but I don't have your experience,
Yeah.
So that's
Yes.
something that you can
Yes.
definitely bring to the table. And like, I mean, when I think about writing books, I'm not necessarily the world's best writer. I'm a pretty good writer, I'm a pretty decent writer.
Yeah.
But I'm not like Chimamanda or whatever, I'm not the world's best writer. But I think
Yeah.
the other thing that people kind of don't leverage or think is as important, the other thing they underrate is consistency.
Sure.
Because you might not be the expert at week 1, but where are you going to be at week 52? Where are you going to be at week 100? Like doing one mentorship Monday is just doing one mentorship Monday. But in a year's time, you will have a roster of 52 of these that you can also then mine for its own content. You can also repurpose. You're creating a community. You can ask your community questions. What do they need more of? What do they want to see, etc. You're creating. So I think it's about your unique points of view, your unique experiences, and the level of consistency that you are willing to dedicate to this thing. That's also
100%.
it's going to credential you, because, as I said, at week 1, it's okay. At week 52, something else. At week 100,
It could be something else. 100%. So then how can people start packaging these skills then to make it some form of expertise? I mean, you made the example of potentially a receptionist, right? And maybe they have not recognized the skill sets that they've been able to gain in that space and in that role. How can somebody who feels like they have a variety of skill set that they've gotten from experience, they don't have specifically maybe the credentials that we were speaking to, how do they then package themselves? What are some of the strategies where, 3 points that people can use to just, start packaging their skills so that they can start positioning themselves better, and then in the process be more confident in how they promote themselves?
great. So I think I might give you 5.
Okay, perfect.
Because
Even better.
some things are just coming to
Even
mind now.
better.
But I think people don't want to start small. In my experience, people are scared to start small. We need to break that. You need to be confident to start small, because everyone with 100,000 followers, and I don't even have 100,000 followers, but everyone with 100,000 followers started with 1 follower. So you need to be prepared to start small and grind, right? Like commit, keep at it. In that starting small, a sub point to starting small is iteration. In business, it's used all the time. You don't necessarily put out the best product in the first go around.
Yes.
feedback from your client, feedback from your consumer is such an integral part to how you build business brands, how you build products. You know, any software that gets put out, there's feedback that you can give. Is crash reports. Oh, this didn't work on my device. So that same methodology of thinking around testing, iterating, gaining feedback from your audience, you need to apply that to your own personal brand and to your own self-promotion. You can put out Mentorship Mondays 20 weeks and then put out a questionnaire, or, you know, reach out to 10 of your top subscribers or people who tune in and ask them, what do you think? What do you want to see more of? Which type of women do you want to see? Which type of men do you want to see? Who should we be, you know? Should we be branching into a book club? What do you think of this? You're going to gain that feedback from your audience, and you're going to grow together, right? The second thing I need people to really think hard about is niching down. You can't be all things to all people. Your niche is your superpower. It's not enough to say, I want to create fashion content. 20 billion people make fashion content. They're not even 20 billion people on earth, but I'm just saying, you know, everyone makes fashion content. But what fashion content are you going to make? Are you going to do easy outfits for busy corporate moms? Or are you going to do luxury club looks for city girls? Like, what is your niche? What is that very specific thing that people know I can come to that person for that? So niche down. No blanket. You need to niche down. And the niching down and the iterating work so closely together, because you're going to get that feedback so much quicker from people. You know? The third thing I want to say is, look at my notes here.
That's fine.
Finding your audience. Finding your audience. So also a lot of time, I feel like some people create content for the sake of creating content. Who are you creating this content for? You know, this is a very old school tip. It's a very magazine girl tip from my days as being in magazines, but you need to have an obsession with who's consuming your content, who you want to consume your content. You need to understand that person, right? Like, it's as easy as going into your analytics on your social apps and seeing, do I have more male followers than female followers? What time are people accessing the content? You know, are they online at 8 a.m.? Are they online at 8 p.m.? Those are small little tricks that can help you understand your audience better. You know, this is a famous story in media, but the founder of Daily Sun, I know, right?
Okay.
It's a contentious
publication.
But the founder of Daily Sun, in the old offices in Auckland Park, when you walk into the offices, they had two statues at the entrance of men in overalls with a scuffed in. And these two statues represented their readers. So every day when the journalists walked into the offices for the Daily Sun, they knew who they were writing for. So you and I might not like, you know, Tokoloshe took over my house headlines. We might not like that. But the content wasn't for us. It wasn't for us. They knew who they were writing for. I even forget which point I'm on. I think that was three or four. That was 4.
That was 3.
That's 3. Okay. The number 4 is, I want to go back to it. I can't say this enough, but consistency. Something I struggle with because I don't like being an influencer. I make my cameos and then I go.
Then you disappear.
But the consistency is so key, because again, week 1, something else. Week 50, something else. Week 100, most people who are in your niche, who are trying to, because this is trending, everyone's doing cooking content or whatever the trending thing is. So everyone is doing it. But by week 100, your competitors are going to have fallen away. You know, they would have gotten bored and moved to the next kind of trend. And if that's truly your niche and truly your passion, by week 100, you are still there. Consistency. And then tip number 5, you don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to, the gossip. Block
Yeah.
your friends if you have to. Block your friends, your family, create a different page on a different name, whatever it takes. Because again, I think we do suffer from that, what are people going to say? We do suffer from this idea of being seen. It's very hard to start new things in South Africa. It is. We're a tough audience. We don't like new things, We have very high expectations for people. If someone comes out with something new, we expect it to be at 100. It
Sure.
can't start at 0.
Sure.
Look at Uncle Waffle. When she first came on the scene, everyone said it's a gimmick. This girl is just dancing. She can't DJ, blah, blah, blah. Now, 2-3 years down the line, or however many years it's been, people act as if, oh, we've always supported her. She's gone international. Oh, Waffle, yes, So
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
have to,
yeah,
you just have to block it out.
yeah.
You just have to
And I
block
think
it
to
out.
that last point, it's so important to know what feedback to block out and what feedback to not, because some of it is constructive, but others, and most of it in most cases, actually is not really
Yeah.
useful. I actually just want to read a point here by Hoiti, and she, I think, was referring to the point around feedback and iterating. So she's saying that that was such an important point. I encourage the community to learn about design
Yes.
thinking, which talks about this. And design thinking is about that, getting feedback from your audience and taking a more empathetic approach when you are engaging with your audience to find out exactly what it is that they need and how you can tailor your products or yourself as a brand for them. Take the feedback and build on it. It's a powerful skill. And then Tobega said, so insightful. Thank you. We've got a comment from Dumiso as well saying 100%, 100%. I hope you guys are taking notes and writing all of that down. And Nicole as well there, giving you a on the mark emoji just to say that those points were right on the mark. I want
Thank
to
you.
talk a bit more about some of the work, that you've done and how your online presence may have elevated your personal brand. For example, I mean, having to move from print media
Yeah.
into digital spaces, into corporates. And also, while you were in print media, just speaking to a question from the audience, someone who asked you, you've had the opportunity to interview influential figures like, Michelle Obama and Rihanna at some point, and how that may have helped to elevate your brand. How do you think these milestones and achievements in your career have helped you just also be able to promote yourself confidently online and also build the community that you currently have online?
So I do think there's badge value, right? There
Okay.
definitely is badge value
Yeah.
to having done all these amazing things. But even in interviewing these women, like the lessons that I learned in my interactions with them, so much more valuable to me as a young professional, well, young then,
Then.
as a professional, than even the personal branding badge value. So, for example, tell the story about meeting Michelle Obama all the time, but it's when you're dealing with, at the time, Barack Obama was the president, so you're dealing with the first lady, and you're dealing with the office of the first lady. So she has
Yes.
staff who organizes everything, right? And so they give you protocol calls ahead of time. They prep you. They do all of these sorts of things. But just few days before our interview, they called me and they asked me to pronounce my name, and they were recording our conversation so that she can practice. So when she meets me, she gets it right.
Sure.
So no cutting corners, no, it's not I'm a small fry from a small magazine in South Africa. No, this is the level of respect that the first lady operates at.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
took that away. I really took that away. And being in her presence and how engaged she was through the entire time was just, it was mind blowing, I mean, I've interviewed so many well-known people here and I've had good and bad experiences. But when you're dealing with someone of that stature and they are locked
Yeah.
in, fully
Yeah.
locked
Yeah.
in. You know, there's
Yeah.
no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no distractions. There's
Mm.
not like you are the most important person in the
Mm-hmm.
room to that
Mm.
person. Like that was again a reiteration of, you know, you will forget how what people said to you, you'll forget everything else, but you'll always remember how they made you feel, which I
Yes.
think is such a big part
100%.
of the personal branding conversation. Again, it's about like the congruency between, well, who are you online and who are you in real life. Like that's
100%.
a lesson that I took
Mm.
very seriously, you know?
Mm.
So even in my personal interactions, I'm at book events or I'm chatting to people, whatever, like I try to be there, you know, I'm locked in,
Yeah.
like someone is
Yeah.
giving me their time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
With Rihanna as well, like she is so different one-on-one than
Mm.
her public persona,
Sure.
but not in a jarring way. Like you can
Okay.
tell this is a very powerful person. She controls every room she's in,
Mm-hmm.
everyone in every room. She has big staff, like
Mm-hmm.
many people on her staff. Every room she's like the center of the room.
Mm.
Like meeting the queen, nobody speaks
Mm.
unless Rihanna speaks.
Mm.
Nobody laughs
Mm.
unless you laugh.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I can crack a joke, the room will be silent.
If
If she
she's
laughs,
not.
everyone laughs. You know, but
Yeah.
the thing that stayed with me about her is she is incredibly polite,
Sure.
incredibly
Sure.
polite. She didn't miss a thank you. She didn't miss a please. She didn't miss a excuse me. She didn't. Manners are here, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big manners girl. Like I'm a big please
Mm-hmm.
and thank you girl. And I
Mm.
was like, when we met, she called me ma'am until we like started chatting, and then she called me by my first name. But I was like, the manners are just
Yeah. Yeah.
impeccable. And
Yeah.
again, like you will remember how people make you feel, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So these
Mm-hmm.
extremely powerful
Mm-hmm.
women, make no bones about it. Like they control the room. They are always in charge. But
Yeah.
it's in the little things. It's in the details.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that speaks to your personal brand being felt, right? And one thing that I actually said in a separate workshop I was part of around personal branding was that it's something that you consistently say, but also that you embody,
Mm.
so that people don't mistake in who you are in the different spaces that you occupy. And I mean, earlier we spoke about that consistency and importance of congruency in different areas. So I want to ask you another question from the audience. This was from Kagiso Nyembe, and he asked, what are your thoughts on using controversial topics or taking a stand on social issues to garner attention and engagement on social media platforms?
Okay. Do you want to make money or do you want to create a brand with longevity? Those are like the questions you need to ask
Yeah.
yourself, right? I think when I was speaking about personal values,
Mm,
you need to be very, very clear, you know?
mm-hmm,
And by personal values, I don't mean I like certain things. By personal values, I mean, are you willing to lose opportunities because of what you believe in?
sure.
To what extent are you willing to lose opportunity? If you are not at all willing to lose opportunity because of certain things you believe in, then
Mm,
those conversations are best avoided.
mm-hmm,
Then be as neutral and be as clear and clean cut and vanilla and middle of the road as you can be, because being outspoken, you are not sitting on a fence. You either here or you there, which means there is a possibility for you to lose opportunity because of
sure.
your voice or because of things you believe in, right?
Mm-hmm,
So you also, that's why I say people say words like brand, like personal values. They say it very flippantly, but when I say personal values, I mean exactly that.
mm-hmm,
Like, how important is this issue to you? You know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not even talking about esoteric conversations like cancel culture, whatever, whatever. I mean real things. Like, if
Yeah.
you say, I am, you know, a feminist and I believe in X and I stand 10 toes in believing in this,
Mm-hmm,
and this is something you hold so dearly, would you be in a situation where you are working with someone who is a known abuser?
Sure. Sure.
Are you willing to leave that money on the table and say, this does not align with my values? You know, I thank you for thinking of me for this opportunity, but this does not align with who I am.
Sure.
That's the level at which I think we should be operating when we talk about personal values. You know, because that's where the incongruency part comes in. That's where the, oh, you're only a keyboard activist. Oh, you saying controversial things for attention. Oh, you know?
Yeah. And we've seen a lot of that. We've seen a lot of that, people being outed for just, having inconsistent values. And I think in the age of like virality, which has become like a form of currency, people resort to just, rage baiting and
Yeah.
just saying things that are going to get them the numbers without really thinking
Of the
consequentially about
consequences.
how is this going to affect me and what it is that I'm trying to be or
Yeah.
trying to build.
And just
And
on that, just to
yes,
clarify,
yes,
like I'm not, I don't say this from the point of view of being a conservative person. I'm
sure.
probably one of the least conservative people you meet. But I always want us to be realistic, right? As long as, like, I'm elder millennial, so I'm getting to that decision. I'm getting into those decision making seats. But the people who are in the decision making seats are people who are older than me, or your Gen X, your baby boomers. These are people late 40s, 50s, 60s who are big decision makers, and they have a very different relationship with certain concepts that I think myself and people who are younger than me, we see things very differently.
Yeah,
Younger people are more likely to see what they say on social media as very disposable.
sure,
They don't think about the long-term
sure,
consequences because
sure.
the timeline moves fast. Instagram stories only last 24 hours, so they have a more, they view it as more disposable. It's not something that they feel lives forever. So they're more likely to just say and do anything off the cuff. But again, I'm not saying this because I'm saying don't be careful what you post. I'm not trying to be lecturing. I'm just saying we need to be mindful of how different people view these kinds of things. So something that you might just be tweeting because you think is engagement bait or a hot topic or whatever. Be mindful who could, would you stand would you stand on stage and say this thing in front of 1,000 women?
Sure.
Sometimes you wouldn't, but you have no qualms posting it to 1,000 followers. Just be very mindful of that.
100%. Just for anybody who's just joined us, we're in conversation with Janine Jellers, and we're talking about how to authentically self-promote on social media. A couple of comments again from the audience, from Nicole, agreeing with the point around just being mindful of what you post and the impact and consequences that may have. Hoitzi again also agreeing, saying that actions speak louder about your values, which is a very, very solid point there. So in terms of then the different social media platforms, right? And for people that are joining the live, and typically the audience that follow Mentorship Mondays, they're big on platforms like LinkedIn, possibly even on Instagram. And I'm not actually sure about the ratio on Twitter, if I'm being honest, but just to consider then these different platforms and how one can go about positioning themselves on these platforms. Do you have any advice for anybody in that regard?
So I definitely think there does need to be a through line. It can't be schizophrenia. You can't be engagement baiting on, and I apologize if that comes across as ableist, but you can't be, on Twitter engagement baiting and being a troll and all kinds of things. And then your LinkedIn profile, you're like, let me tell you about professionalism. I think there has to be a through line. For myself, I think most people know I love pop culture. I think pop culture says so many interesting things about us as a society. So I do comment on pop culture, but I always try to give it a more like a different spin, like a more intellectual spin. And I hope that comes through. So there is a through line when I then speak about things like the business of the music
Yes,
business, or the business
yes.
of, certain PR moves by artists or whatever that is. So I try to keep within certain content pillars that work for me, that I'm
Mhm,
known for,
mhm.
without creating that kind of, again, incongruence, a word we're overusing here this evening. But people
Yeah.
aren't looking at one and going, who is this person versus this platform where it's like, who is this person? So I think
Mm.
creating that through line. If you want to be a troll, create a burner account.
Please, please.
Don't
Save your
use your
future
full
jobs.
government name. If
Yeah,
you want to troll, don't do it under your full government name.
yeah.
But I'm hoping that the audience here are not people who want to troll in their free time. But yeah, just create kind of it doesn't have to be super formalized, but it could be helpful to create content pillars for yourself. Like, what are the things you want to speak about? Like,
Mhm.
what are the things that make sense for your personal brand? Like, obviously I'm in media, so media, pop culture, I'm a writer, so books, writing,
Mhm.
those kinds of things
Mhm.
make sense for my
Mhm.
personal brand. If you worked at a vet's office, you know,
Yes.
the cute cat memes on Instagram would work perfectly. And then speaking about, animal welfare on LinkedIn, or the
Sure,
business of
sure.
animals or the business of the vet service on LinkedIn, and then taking
Mhm.
it through to Twitter, maybe creating your cat of the day account or whatever that looks like. So just,
Mhm.
what are those through lines? What are the content pillars that you feel this is what I want to speak to?
Sure, sure. And just we almost about to wrap up, but I just want to ask you about the importance of reading in having to build a personal brand and self-promotion. We need to talk about that. I've been seeing the word anti-intellectualism quite a bit on the
Whew.
socials recently, and I think that's going to be a crisis, or already is one. So let's talk about the importance of reading when it comes to building a solid, credible personal brand that can also just, be translated across all these different platforms.
Ooh, Mbali, the way you said reading, I could feel it. You are like, take us back to
Please,
the book,
let's pick up a
okay?
book.
I fully agree with you. I'm a voracious reader. I'm very passionate
Yeah,
about reading. You can't write if you're not a reader, in my opinion.
yeah.
Again, it's an immense privilege. I understand that, to be able to go and get an MBA or get any of these advanced professional degrees,
Mhm.
but not everyone can get an MBA. Again, it's a privilege, but many of us can access knowledge through books. Many
Sure.
of us can access knowledge, like Johannesburg Library has the Libby app, which I'm now falling in love with, where
Okay.
from this device you can access books. You can access ebooks and audiobooks using your Johannesburg Library
I
account.
didn't know
So
that.
yes,
I did not know that. Thank you for the
and it's
plug.
free. So
Yeah.
get into it.
Amazing.
So I always have a book on the go. And again, here's a key that I'm going to share with the audience.
Hmm.
If you feel like I don't have credibility, what can I speak about? Go find the top 5 books in your field, read them, and condense them
Hmm.
out. Insights from book 1,
Hmm.
insights from book 2, insights from book 3. it it works whether you're an accountant, whether you're a lawyer, whether
Hmm.
you are whatever line of whatever field of work you're in. That works if you want to create a presence for yourself and you don't know where to start. Go and
Hmm.
find 5 books related to your area of expertise or your area of interest, and start by summarizing books and put that information out there, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram,
Sure.
whatever the
Sure.
case may be. It's
Hmm.
as simple as that, as simple as that.
Hmm.
But it means you have to read
And comprehend.
and comprehend.
Yeah, so we've got a very interesting question actually from Tomega. She's asking, well, she's commenting firstly, saying that we live in an era where people wear different hats. So if I'm a businesswoman and a dancer, for example, how do I cater to one audience without alienating the other? Sure, important question.
Are you sure you have different? Are you sure those are different people? Are you sure your audience is not? Oh, hi, Tomega. Are you sure your audience is not people who are interested in business and want to understand how to tap into creativity,
Mm,
or creatives who want to tap into business?
mm,
Like, is there no way
mm,
that you can marry those two
mm.
interests and find that niche? Again, the niching
Yes,
down aspect comes into,
yes.
because that's your secret sauce. Like, those are the things that make you special. Many people are in business, many people dance, but you are in business and you're a
And you
dancer.
dance. Sure, sure.
So, is there a way you can find to marry those two aspects? Because dancing isn't just about necessarily your own body movement, but it could be about, you know, integrating daily movement for mindfulness as a business person. It could be tapping
Sure.
into your creativity practices as a business person. I'm just giving ideas like that. Like, I think,
Yeah,
don't,
yeah.
it's not necessary to create two different personas, because I'm a business person who likes writing, who
Mm-hmm.
likes pop culture, and I
Mm-hmm.
comment about all of it. And sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
some of those people reach out to me and they'll ask me which lipstick to buy or which perfume to use, and I have an opinion on
Yeah.
that too. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Amazing. So, Tobeka is saying that she loves that perspective. Thank you. And I think it's brilliant. It's really just about two worlds converging, right? And
Yeah.
then just leveraging whatever it is at that convergence point to speak to an audience and a niche that you so beautifully highlighted. So, in closing, what is the risk of not promoting yourself?
In my notes, I wrote, closed mouths don't get fed.
100%.
So increasingly, self promotion is becoming normalized. It's becoming the way of doing business. Even as young as Gen Z, who is much more comfortable with self promotion, becomes more entrenched in the workplace, it's going to become kind of a why aren't you doing it? It's going to become the driving factor for how we operate within the business world, and it's really important. Like, this is really important. I really want to touch on this because I
Mm-hmm.
forgot to mention this,
Yeah.
but I want to talk about increasing your visibility, because
Yes.
that is also such an important part of the conversation around personal branding, right? And this one is for my corporate girlies, because sometimes I think as media people, it's almost secondhand, second nature that we're in these businesses, we're in these worlds. But I want to talk to the corporate girlies and the corporate gents. It's as simple as sending out a weekly email to your manager or to your leadership
Mm-hmm.
team about current projects on the go and your contribution to those projects.
Sure.
Creating that visibility. On the
Sure.
basis of that, inviting key people out for coffee chats, making it known, hi, I'm me, I'm that person who's been moving that project along, and not in like a braggadocious way, but in a way where you interacting with people and you're finding out their interests, you're finding out
Sure.
what they're working on, you're giving inputs from what you're working on. So the increasing of that visibility, again, closed mouths do not
Don't
get
get
fed. How are
scared.
you going to get that
Yeah.
promotion if they don't know that you're the one doing the great work?
100%. And to close off, visibility creates opportunities. So do keep
Absolutely.
that in mind. Where can we find out more about you, about your book, and any upcoming projects that you might have in the pipeline?
Fantastic. So, well, this is on Instagram, so you can go to my Instagram
Mm-hmm.
profile. I have a link tree there, which will take you to my website, janinjalas.com. You can find all, my links to my social media, my links to my books. My current book that's out now, When the Filter Fades, it's
Love
available at exclusive book
it.
and all major bookstores.
Love it.
And projects I'm currently working on, I need to get back to writing. I need to put my fingers back on the keyboard and write for
We need a
people.
sequel. We need
I
a
need to write for
sequel, please.
people. I'm also working on a new newsletter, because the noise of social media, I want to take it back a little bit. I want to take a step back and bring people into my world a little bit more, and have that more authentic conversations. So that will be coming out shortly. But yeah, thank you so much for this thoughtful IG.
Oh, goodness. And It seems like we've lost Janine there just as we were wrapping up. Oh my goodness. Okay, then that brings us to the end of our live. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Really appreciate the comments, the questions, and just the engagement. We will see you on the next Mentorship Mondays, which is going to be next week, Monday. My name is Mbali Ziane. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We'll chat soon. Bye-bye.